So I'm not talking about like a utopia or about anyone waiting on them to teach us something. I'm looking at what we've done as far as making progress and possibly taking a different direction. So reparations comes to mind. And so I looked at the history of reparations, and of course there's Special Field Order number 15, which comes from it comes from Sherman, okay? And that was for a certain amount of land in Mississippi.
Who was Sherman?
General Sherman?
General Sherman?
Here, I can actually
wow.
read it. Near the end of the Civil War, General Sherman and Secretary of War Stanton met in Savannah, Georgia with 20 ministers of the local black community. Sherman was looking for a way to deal with the tens of thousands of black refugees and former slaves who'd followed along with his army seeking protection. There was also the issue of former slaves already in the area and those who'd served admirably in the Union Army. The result was Special Field Order number 15, which called for the confiscation of land along the coast of South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. The land was to be divided into 40-acre tracts for former slaves, often referred to as 40 acres and a mule. The white landowners protested, and General Sherman's order was rescinded less than a year later by President Andrew Johnson.
Wow.
Okay, and so then in 1866, the U.S. Congress passed the Southern Homestead Act to provide freedmen with the land in southern states at the cost of $5 for 80 acres. Only 1,000 freedmen received homesteads. So that's how we first got started with reparations. And then in May 4th, 1969, there was the manifesto, which I cannot read, but there was the Black Manifesto, so anybody please feel free to look it up online. I have a little timeline here, and the Rosewood Massacre was in 1923. 1955, they came up with the Protection of the Civil Liberties Act. 1988,
Who came up with the civil
I don't know, I just have protection
Okay.
of. And just so you know,
Mhm.
I looked it up because the Civil Liberties Act came up in 1988, so I want to know, well, what was it protecting? But I don't have that. So 1994, the Rosewood Massacre reparations, they actually got them. In 2014, look at this timeline. The North Carolina Eugenics and Victim Compensation, which is another form of reparations. And then in 2015, the Chicago Ordinance came. And basically that's where people who had been victimized by the police, they had to pay back. In 2019, H.R. 40 commissioned to study and develop reparation proposals for African American Ancestors Act. And then in 2019, the Georgetown students, that's when they got together and they wanted the... So, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at reparations, and I'm looking at the timeline, and I'm looking at the possibility of us all getting the equivalent of 40 acres and a mule. I don't see it, okay? But what I do see is we all have a case. Whereas you were saying asking the colonizers or the European minds that are asking anyone to give us anything, I'm not your ask kind of sister. I'm not asking for nothing. Bottom line is, I would love to see a class action against the Board of Education. Do you know what I mean? Because we have been miseducated. Simple as that. And it's the miseducation that we have dealt with that has us where we are right now. We have been trained to think a certain way so much to where I still cannot wrap my mind around the fact that a grown man stopped a teenager walking down the street, stopped him, called the police, and the police said, leave the kid alone. This grown man stopped him shot this kid and got away with it because we're so dangerous. Do you know? I mean, this whole thinking of what we've been taught is insane. And if you look at it with American history, and the media plays a major role in that. Look at how when I grew up, we had cowboy and Indian movies. Those dirty, thieving, redskin savages. Well, the truth of the matter is, here these people came, stole the land. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, propaganda is big.
Yes. So my thing is, we need to come together as a people, but not just the black people, because everybody's been cheated. We need to come together as a people against the people. We need to hold those who are responsible for education accountable for the miseducation. Now, where black people come in and where we get the benefit is the damage that's been done as a result. Because there's a whole bunch of damage that's been done as a result. But just for starters, we need some new textbooks. And there's plenty out there. We need these kids coming up in school. Yes, we do continuously need to self-educate without question. But we need, when Johnny starts school, Johnny needs to be able to open that textbook in school and not see where this is a grand white society. Johnny needs to open those textbooks and say, wow, this is what happened? Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway.
That's true. You had spoke about, a class action suit. And for me is that, again, although that sounds great, is looking at the current system and the way it is. And we already know that the legal system is unjust. So a class action suit. Okay. But if there haven't been any changes within those systems, and maybe a class action suit may call for changes within the system. But legally, and we look at our legal system, is that nothing has been equitable in our legal system thus far.
That's true.
So, yeah, we will go to battle for class action suit, and that's fine. That may need to take place, for incremental changes to take place, and that might happen. And so I think that we have to look at many ways in which we educate ourselves, educate others, along with going, that route, because I guess I'm pessimistic about the legal system. The legal system just haven't worked. So is finding a way in which we start re-educating ourselves, re-educating, our community, and start. To me, it starts with self-identifying who I am. Define self-definition. I need to define who I am. I need to know who I am as a person.
Good manners start at home.
Yeah, and to start looking at that, because even today, when you talk about the educational system, our kids are going to school today, and they're not, they can't or have. There's a problem with them understanding what they're learning because it's not relevant and it's not true. And so they come out, they're getting mixed messages and they're coming out confused.